And what a lot of cloud beginners don't realize is that the actual cloud is only a small part of cloud work, which sounds counterintuitive.
It's very true.
So AWS is actually a small part. So some of the other parts include, like I mentioned, Git and CI/CD, Linux, like non-cloud stuff. Hi, my name is Fayomi. I'm a senior solutions architect where I helped businesses leverage the cloud. I also run a YouTube channel called Cloud Career Mentor where I help teach people the skills they need to get into the cloud industry. Nice to be here.
I'm so glad we are able to sync up. I know two different sides of the world kind of, and different time zones. It's evening here, it's morning there. I'm just super glad we could make this happen.
Me too. I'm so excited to be on here.
Absolutely. So can you share your story on how you first got interested in cloud technology and what led you to specialize in AWS?
About 6-7 years ago, I knew I wanted to get into the technology space, but I didn't know what exactly. But I knew by learning technical skills, that would open up a lot of doors for me. So the first thing I learned was the Linux command line, just because it looked really technical and cool. You have the image of the matrix with the numbers falling down and the terminal. So that really attracted me to Linux. And I thought, if I could crack this, then I'll feel really technical. So, I spent some time learning the Linux command line, learning how to navigate it. And then I thought, okay, now I know how to create folders. I know how to do things. What next? And so I thought, let me create a web server. And so, found some tutorials online, created a web server on the Linux server. And then I thought, what's next? Now we need to upload that server to something called the cloud. So I, set up an AWS account, uploaded it to the cloud. And so it's just more of exploring my curiosity. And I started picking up all these skills that turned out to be important for the cloud industry. Applied for a couple of jobs, got one in a cloud consultancy, and that's how I got involved in the cloud industry.
That's actually really cool. What were some of the initial challenges you faced when breaking into the cloud industry?
I'd say the initial challenges was when I joined the cloud industry about 6-7 years ago. I didn't really know what I was doing, but also the cloud industry was quite young, so no one really knew what they were doing.
No one knows what they're doing.
Which is great. But a couple of things I learned was, one, the sort of frustrations in troubleshooting is part of the job. So, I'm sure a lot of your listeners work in the technology industry, so they know the feeling where they have a problem, they can't get it to work, and then they feel frustrated because they're spending hours troubleshooting. It's just like that in the cloud industry, except I didn't realize that, troubleshooting takes time and that's natural. And so for a long time, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing because I couldn't just solve, problems with a click of my fingers. And I didn't realize that, actually, it takes time to troubleshoot something and that's okay. So that's one of the big problems that I felt when I was in the cloud industry. But apart from that, I found it really sort of interesting and really creative. And it's really changed my life in terms of, the kind of work I'm doing, the kind of lifestyle I live. So, for example, I work completely remotely now. Nice. And it's really great.
I think a lot of people dream of, working remotely. There's some people that really don't enjoy it. Some people are real people person, those extrovert personalities. And there's some people that really thrive. And in all honesty, it's proven that some people do much better work when they work remote and stuff like that. And I know that is like a far future dream of mine. But right now in my role, I'm super happy where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think, different things work for different people and even at different stages in life. So I'm sure at some point remote might be more suitable. At some point, in person is more suitable.
In your opinion, what are some of the fundamental skills someone needs to really start a career in cloud technology? They're maybe already in tech, but at an entry-level job. What do they need to learn to level up to be able to land that first cloud position?
I think before we go to that, because that's a great question, what I want to actually talk about is why someone should learn cloud in the first place, because the why is really important.
True.
So I've been talking a lot with IT professionals, and what I found is, there's some people who love their job, they're just cracking on, it's great. But some others, maybe they've reached third line support, maybe they feel like they're stagnating. Or for a lot of people, they've noticed the cloud sort of creep into their work. So, their company has started using S3 as storage, or they're using Azure AD integration as their Active Directory. I think it's called Infra AD or something now. And so a couple of people are noticing that the cloud is creeping in, and they're wondering what that is. And, I read a survey recently that 90% of all companies use some cloud services, and a lot of them are looking to migrate more and more of their traditional IT operations into the cloud. And so I actually believe that as an IT professional, it's really important to at least start learning these cloud skills, even if you love, what you do in IT or wherever. But I think it's really important to start learning these skills because they'll make you more valuable in the workplace. If when your company does decide to migrate into the cloud, if you have those skills, guess what? You're going to be the main point of contact. You're going to be the one leading those projects. So I think it helps to, to build your skills and to make you a bit more valuable in the company. And another reason why it might be worth learning the cloud is that it opens up new career opportunities. So, you've been working in IT or you've been in whatever job you're in, you might find that once you start learning cloud skills, you actually like working in the cloud because they use a lot of the same things as IT professionals, right? It's all about compute, networking, storage, databases. So it's a lot of the things, a lot of people use on a day-to-day basis, just in a different context, a different format. And what a lot of people find is that once they start learning these cloud skills, they get hooked. And, they want to learn more. And so, it opens up career opportunities like cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, even solutions architect further down the line, which are really high paid industries. So, those are some of the reasons it might be worth considering getting into the cloud. To answer your question as to what someone actually needs to do to get into the cloud, I think the very first thing is to have a learning roadmap. The reason this is important is because there are so many technologies that you can learn in the cloud because there's so many different concepts, so many different processes. And what I found is that people who don't have a plan or a roadmap, they end up not being organized in their learning. So one day they're learning Linux, the next day they're learning Python, the next day they're trying to learn Kubernetes. And it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
I've gone through it and I know a lot of people go through something similar. The roadmap is the first thing you need. And I'll just give a rundown of what I think it's important to learn and also in what order, because the order of learning is critical because each technology sort of builds on each other. And if you try to learn something later on, so if you try to learn something before you learn another thing, you could get into trouble. So, the first thing I think anyone who's looking to get into the cloud should learn is Linux. And this is because Linux runs, 90% of all cloud workloads. And the reason that is pretty simple. Linux is cheaper than Microsoft. So,
it's very true.
I'm sure a lot of people are used to working in Microsoft and that's okay. But the reason Linux is cheaper is because with the cloud, you're usually paid for your servers in terms of how much CPU and how much memory they use. So if you think of Windows, it has a GUI, so it has the interface and it uses up a lot of CPU and memory. So you have to pay more per virtual machine. Whereas Linux, a lot of the time, all you need is the terminal or the command line, which uses a lot less resources. So it's really cheap to use Linux. So a lot of companies do that. This is why you should learn Linux as the first technology. Once you learn Linux, now you pick your cloud platform. And I generally recommend AWS just because it's still the biggest cloud platform, but also Microsoft Azure works great. GCP works great. So just pick a cloud platform and start doing projects on it. Start creating virtual machines, start installing applications, start using their storage. Get familiar with the cloud provider. So in this case, AWS. Once you know how to create projects using the console, because that's sort of like the basics, you click around creating things. The next step is to do something called infrastructure as code. This is where you actually script your infrastructure. So rather than clicking around to create resources, you write a script using a tool called Terraform, which is more cloud agnostic, but each cloud provider also have their own tools. And when you learn how to script infrastructure, that sort of takes you to the next level of cloud skills. After that, I recommend you learn Git and CI/CD. So Git for version control, you can store your code in a repository. You can manage your code that way. But also you can then plug it into a CI/CD pipeline. So continuous integration, continuous development. And, this would help you to deploy your applications and infrastructure quicker and more effective to the cloud. And it's very, very important in DevOps. So CI/CD, you should learn it. And the final two things I'm going to talk about here are Python. Because scripting is a huge part of cloud work. It uses a lot of automation to pull all these pieces together. So learning Python, if you know another programming language like Java or Go or something else, those are still useful. But I find a lot of the time in the cloud industry, Python is usually the go-to just because it's the easiest and most people know how to use it. And the final thing I'd recommend people who want to learn cloud skills learn is Docker. Just because, Docker and containers are becoming more and more relevant because you can package your code and run them independent of a virtual machine. And a lot of companies use Docker. So yeah, those are the technologies I'd recommend beginners learn at the start of their journey.
You had mentioned, before you figure out what skills, you should really think why cloud. And that is very true. A question I get asked all the time is my job going to be replaced by the cloud? And I really want to hear your thoughts on that, especially with the pandemic. With a couple of years ago with the pandemic, there was a huge push up to the cloud. Like we had to throw everything up to the cloud. Everyone was remote. And now it feels like things are kind of trickling back down and we're seeing this hybrid infrastructure, at least in my opinion. Do you think eventually everything's going to start moving to the cloud, or is there not going to be a reason to have an on-premise IT, team anymore?
That's a great question. And I guess the way I'd answer that is just looking at trends. So cloud spend, it grows bigger and bigger every year. More and more companies are moving to the cloud. Now, I still think there's going to be a need for IT support. So in terms of, people still need their laptops configured and fixed, and, there's still sort of physical things people need. But I do think more and more of those roles are going to go into the cloud. The way I think about it is cinemas, right? Now, bear with me on this. Before the pandemic, everyone used to go to the cinemas. That used to be the fun thing to do. But during the pandemic, a lot more shows came on Netflix, Disney Plus, all these streaming platforms. And now people have become more used to watching things at home. They have bigger TVs. Their home setup is a lot better. Now, this doesn't mean cinemas are going away, but a lot less people are going to go to cinemas as regularly as they can, as they used to. And I think that's sort of the way with IT support. Like, it's not going to go away. There's just going to be less and less opportunities. And I think those people who actually learn these cloud skills and take the plunge, it would actually make them more valuable as an IT professional. Because like you mentioned, a lot of companies are going to go hybrid. So they're not going to need just a dedicated IT person anymore. They're going to need an IT person who also has cloud skills, who also knows how to work with the cloud, who also gives ideas on how to improve processes and systems using the cloud. So I think the role of an IT professional is just gonna change a bit.
IT and just tech in general is always constantly evolving. And if you learn to evolve with, as things start to change, you're always going to be in a good place. You really can never stop learning in this field. Cloud is just the next thing, the next trend, the next progression, the logical progression in the IT ecosystem. And people who are well diverse in all the different multiple skills are really going to be the ones that are going to, find, good job security in the career field.
I completely agree. And this is even independent of the cloud industry or technology. I personally believe that you should always look at where the puck is going, and you should always see, okay, where is my career headed? Where is the industry headed? And this is where you should sort of prioritize your efforts, because, nothing stays the same. So if you're staying stagnant, you're actually being left behind. So I think you should always be looking at, how do I develop my skills? Where's the next step I want to get to? If you feel like you're bored and stagnant, take your career into your own hands. Like, what do I want to learn, rather than waiting for what does my manager want me to learn? So that's just the way I've always approached my career. And I think that served me really well.
No, same, exactly the same here. I've told the story several times. I was able to, I went from a bulldozer operator and was able to go from landing my first help desk job to becoming director of network operations in 3 years' time, the first 3 years of my career.
Wow.
I didn't cut any corners with that. That was all just constant hard grinding work to just figure out how everything works, figure out how I could help, how I could learn more skills. I really feel that the tech field is starting to require more of those people that have that inner drive, that aren't just here to collect a paycheck. They're actually really passionate about that, and they're excited to level up those skills. And those are the people that we're seeing make six figures and more rapidly in the tech field.
And I just want to stay on that because I think that's such an inspiring story of how you're able to go from a bulldozer operator to help desk to like, I think that's one of those skills that people don't appreciate enough to go, you know, this is what I want to do, and you go for it. Yeah. I'm sure you're putting a lot of work, a lot of effort. And even when you got that job, you know, you put in even more work and more effort because a lot of people want to get into the cloud industry. And what I've noticed is that they almost see it as a lottery. And this is because there's a lot of tech influencers going, oh yeah, you can earn six figures in your first job and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, getting the job is where the work actually begins, because now you have clients, you have managers, you have deadlines, you have new technologies.
That's where the grind starts.
That's when it starts. And I encourage people when they're getting into the industry, rather than thinking, how can I do it as quickly as possible? It's how can I develop a process of learning? Before I go into the cloud industry, you know, I had a full-time job as well. I was like an audiovisual engineer. And what I did, I was like, okay, you know, usually I wake up at 7 a.m., you know, get ready, go to work. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. now, do an hour of studying before I go to work. And so that way, no matter what I did, at least I could spend the rest of the day guilt-free because, you know, I've done the most important thing of the day. And so I did that for months and months. Every day, wake up at 6, do my cloud work, and then go to my job. And what I found is that actually served me really well, because once I actually got a cloud job, the routine was already set. Yep. So I was still learning outside of work. I was still growing. And that's how, similar to you, I was able to rise up quite quickly in, similar 3 years as well to become a solutions architect, which usually takes 5 to 7 years, because it's like, you're not just doing your job, you're also improving yourself outside of your working hours.
Absolutely. No. And that sounds so much similar to my routine. You know, I've really kind of honed it in. Like every morning on my commute into work, I have a podcast in my ear. I'm listening to what's going on in the industry. You know, I have a few select podcasts I cycle through. It's either industry news or I'm learning something. Then at work, I'm labbing in different environments. I have an hour lunch break. And during that hour, I'm either watching tutorial videos on how to do a new skill that I don't know, you know, whether I'm using an online learning platform or even just using Google. And then I often come home and I have my own home lab set up and I'll go practice what I learned. I don't always hit all three in the same day, but I always make sure and dedicate at least an hour to my studies, because I'm a firm believer you have to constantly be learning, because the industry is evolving at such a quick rate. This is true for any part of the tech field, not just cloud, but anything. You really have to have that drive to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, you're hardcore. Like, I totally agree with that. And in some aspects as well, like, you know, it doesn't have to be, to those listening, it doesn't have to be in the morning. It could be when works for you. And what I found when I was starting is I told myself, just do 15 minutes. You know, even if you don't do anything, just get up, go to your laptop and, you know, just open it up. Absolutely. And because the hardest part is starting. And, you know, you realize once you actually get to your computer and you actually start, it becomes easier. But just the thought of doing it, you know, you procrastinate. So for some people, it's 6 a.m. For some people, it's 6 p.m. I had to just pick a time every day that, you know, at this time, I'm just going to go to my computer and start. You know, you start with 15 minutes, then you realize, oh, I can do 30 minutes of focus work. And after a couple of weeks, I can do 45 minutes. So this is, if you just think of it as a skill that you can build and develop over time. So for the listeners, you know, don't feel like you have to start doing an hour straight. Start with 15 minutes, but make it consistent. And pretty soon you realize that you're doing a lot more than you thought you could.
Absolutely. And I could spend the rest of the hour talking about this, but I want to keep the conversation going because I know you have so much more great advice. I'm curious, how did you decide on becoming a solution architect? Was there like a pivotal moment in your career path that steered you to that direction?
Yes. So I think my cloud career has just been a series of action, just taking action. So, you know, I never intended to go into the cloud industry. I never intended to be a solution architect. My whole mentality was, A, how can I learn as much as I can? B, how can I add as much value as I can? And, it started off with my first job. One thing I prioritized was any job no one else wants to do, I'm putting my hand up, I'm going to do that. Any job that seems too difficult, I'm putting my hands up, I'm going to do that. And, sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I failed. But what happens is that if you're the person that goes, I'll do it, people start to take notice, start to build your skills. And because you start to prove to yourself that you're good, because sometimes when I say I do it, like I had no idea how I do it, right? But, one way or the other, you model through, you ask for help, you sort of get it done. And then that builds your confidence. So becoming a solutions architect was the same. Like outside of work, I'd study, like I'd do all the certifications. Now,
yes.
Side conversation about certifications. People always ask, do I need certifications to be a cloud engineer? And I usually say no. Like, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 certifications you need just to get your head around the cloud and what they mean. But apart from that, your focus should be on building hands-on projects and, because that's what employers care about. But that being said, once you actually get a job and you actually have some experience, that's when certifications become really important. Like, after I got my first job, about a year in, I made a commitment. I'm going to get all the certifications. So as of today, I have 9 AWS certification, 1 Kubernetes certification, 1 Terraform certification, because it's sort of like timing. Once you have a job, now you want to expand your knowledge. Okay, what are the tools available? What tool do I use in what context? Why do I use this type of database over this other type of database? True. And, that's when the sort of solution architect part comes in, because now you can start making informed decisions. Now you can start providing recommendations. Now you can go, actually, rather than storing our files on an EBS volume, let's use S3 instead, because S3 is cheaper, it's more scalable. You can start making business cases for your decisions. And so it sort of happened over time. And I'd say the biggest changing point was when I got a job in a cloud consultancy. I love consultancies because I feel like your learning accelerates. So for those who don't know, a consultancy is basically a place you work where they have multiple clients. So from week to week or month to month, you could be working on different clients on different projects. And what that does is that really accelerates your learning, because if you're working in, say, one company, you're doing similar things, you're maintaining, new projects might not come across that often. So your scope of learning is quite limited. However, when you're in a consultancy, when each client has a different problem, you're using your brain in different ways and you're sort of fine-tuning your skills. And so working in a consultancy really helped me to become more confident and to learn the skills needed to be a solutions architect. Because another thing about solutions architect is a lot of people get it wrong, thinking it's all about making design decisions or drawing pretty diagrams. Actually, that's like 10% of the work. 90% of the work is speaking to your client or customer, understanding, okay, what's the actual problem, documenting their current environment, like really understanding what they need, what their restrictions are, what the business requirements are. That's like step 1. Step 2 is, okay, doing some research to think, what's the best solution for this client? Step 3, that's where you get to draw the diagrams and write the documentation on what you'd like to do. But there's also a hidden step, which is the communication. Throughout this whole process, you're liaising with the different stakeholders, running workshops, documenting, presenting your solution, defending your solution, because they might be like, why do we use this? We always use that. And you have to go, no, this is better because A, B, and C.
Yep.
And being able to build trust with the customer and just honing all those communication skills that as tech people, we might not be used to as much, because, we're just used to putting our head down and getting the job done. So that's another learning. It's like, how do I talk to the CEO that this solution I'm proposing is better than what he thinks or what she thinks is right? How do I talk to the head of engineering and show them that actually by switching over to this technology, we have X amount of cost savings? So communication is another essential skill. And this is part of what you mentioned earlier, where you should always be looking to learn and grow and improve yourself.
So much useful information in there. A lot of people always just come to me and like, I'm going to get this certification. I'm going to get that certification. And then I'm going to apply for my first job in the tech field. And I always tell them, you don't need these certifications to land that first job in that career path. Yes, always focus on certifications for that next job, and focus on your career progression. But if you have the drive and the motivation, a lot of the times you can do it without these certifications. You don't need to use these certifications as a crutch to hold you back. I agree with you. There is a couple entry level certifications that kind of build that foundational level knowledge. But once you get your foot in the door, a lot of these skills you can develop on the job. Certifications are definitely nice, and they won't get you that next job, but they'll get you into that interview for that next position. Don't expect these certifications to do it all for you, but they will definitely help in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I almost think that there's too much information out there. There's too many voices giving advice, especially from a lot of people who aren't actually successful in the cloud industry. Yeah. I'll give you an example. When I was getting my first job, the cloud wasn't cool. No one was talking about the cloud. So there wasn't really any information. So I didn't even know about certifications. I was just doing project and applying for jobs, keeping it simple. And, then I got my job. I didn't have any certifications when I got my first cloud job. On the other side, I could also argue that it's become more competitive to get into the cloud industry because, more people know about it. More people are trying to get in. So you want to try to get an edge, but getting certification does not give you an edge. And the reason that is because most times you're looking to get a cloud certification, like an AWS certification or an Azure certification. And what a lot of cloud beginners don't realize is that the actual cloud is only a small part of cloud work, which sounds counterintuitive. So AWS is actually a small part. So some of the other parts include, like I mentioned, Git and CI/CD, Linux, like non-cloud stuff that you also need to learn. And every minute you spend dedicating to get to that third cert or that fourth cert is time you're not spending learning the other more important technical skills, which can only be done using, hands-on projects. And another benefit of hands-on projects, which no one really talks about, is that it builds your troubleshooting skills. And at the end of the day, that's what employers are paying you for, your troubleshooting skills, your critical skills. Anyone can follow a tutorial if it's written out to you. Do you do when there isn't a tutorial, or what do you do when you get an error that's not in line with just following the video? That's what you're paid for. If you do certifications, trust me, everything's going to seem so easy. Oh yeah, how do you create this? Oh, you just create a VPC, you add some subnets. Okay. When you actually do that, you realize, oh, there's these other things that go into it. And that's where the real learning is. And that's why I really encourage people to just start doing it, get their hands dirty, because theory is very different from practice. Learning how to drive a car and doing a test about that is very different from actually, getting in the car and driving and you see, oh, traffic's coming your way. There's a roundabout. You have to stay calm under pressure and all these things that go into, you have to just sit there and troubleshoot for an hour or 2 hours. And that's just how you learn, right? So these are things you can't get from certifications.
It's funny you bring that up. I've, in my current role, I've really transitioned. I've started, in being in charge of doing the hiring, for our organization and stuff. And a lot of times I'll ask the person I'm interviewing very open-ended question and say, okay, how would you solve this problem? And I really don't want an answer. A lot of times I'll try to drill down and get all these questions. I'm like, just walk me through your process and how you would figure out the solution. And what I'm listening for is I want to hear how they're going to work through the problem, their mindset on troubleshooting. I want to hear more than, oh, I'm just going to go check the documentation. If I can't figure it out, I'm going to go ask someone for help. No, I want to hear them say, well, if I really don't understand what is going on there, I'm going to start doing my research. I'm going to check documentation. If I can't find an answer there, I'm going to start looking online. I'm going to look at Google. I'm going to start using all the resources out on the internet. With all the stuff that's going on, there's rarely an issue that you come across that someone hasn't talked about and thoroughly documented on some internet forum. If anyone's in the tech industry says that they don't Google their problems anymore, they're lying. Because in all honesty, we all do it like on a weekly basis. We all come across something that we don't truly understand and like, oh, how does that work? Let me go down the rabbit hole here. But getting back to what I was saying is, when I'm hiring someone, I want to hear their thought process and I want to see how they're going to work through the problem, because I have a whole bunch of other things to do and other people to manage. I can't be there helping that person. I need them to be a self-starter and eager and motivated enough to learn how to solve the solutions on their own.
I think you've just touched on something here as well, which again, I always think, what's the sub message here? And the sub message here is, how do they communicate that?
Yes.
Because they could be thinking I'll do that, but for some reason they don't say that, or they panic and they just give a quick answer. Is how do you communicate that, and be okay with that? Oh, if, with this problem, check the documentation. I do some Googling on Stack Overflow. Because people probably do that, but for some reason, they panic. You'd be surprised, because I mentor people who want to get into the cloud industry, and so we'll do like a mock interview and I ask a simple question that's always going to come up, like, tell me about some cloud projects you've done, and people freeze and they start looking up into the sky and they start panicking. I'm like, this question is going to come up.
Exactly.
Why are you not ready? And so there's so many sort of side things that go into, people who are successful versus people who aren't. And communication is one. Preparedness is one. The ability to troubleshoot is another one. And it's just, and that's why it's like, certifications are good, but there's 10 other skills that you also need to focus on as well.
Whenever I'm getting ready for an interview, I actually get some index cards and start writing down questions I think they're going to ask me in the interview. And I'll start rehearsing those answers. I don't necessarily memorize them verbatim, but just to help me relax. And whenever I'm answering those kind of questions, and also I take a second to think before I answer, and just like, and I repeat the question in my mind or out loud, depending on the situation. And, then start working through the troubleshooting. And I want to talk about this a little bit more, but I want to take a step back here, because we touched on it a little bit. We've talked about, studying, we've talked about certifications, we've talked about the importance of building your own lab. Let's talk about what advice you would give someone who is working in the tech industry and they said, okay, I've done all these things, I'm ready to start applying for jobs. What is that first step? Do you just start going out and applying for everything and anything under the sun? Do you just start spraying out your resume or CV to everyone? Or is there any advice you have for that process?
That's a great question. And I think there's actually 3 approaches you can take to get your first cloud job. So this is assuming you've done all the actual work. So step 1 is what I call the inside man method. So this is where, you're already working in a company that has cloud technologies. So rather than trying to get a job outside, you can just get a cloud job within that company. So how do you do this? You do this by starting to reach out and network with like the cloud engineers in your company or the solutions architects. Just tell them like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in cloud. Here's some projects I've been working on. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. How do you think I could improve? Start showing that you're interested and start communicating that, hey, I'm here, I'm learning cloud, I'm interested in this. And once you do that, what would happen is that if a project comes on, they might go, oh, we need a new pair of hands. I know Dakota's interested in this. Let's get him on and, see what he can do. I'd say that's the first way. And that's probably the easiest way. A lot of people make that transition. The second way is what I call the spray and pray method, which personally, that's actually my approach.
Really?
Because the reality is most cloud jobs have the same skills. They require the same things. They just call them. So if you have a resume that hits all the main points of what most cloud employers are looking for, you can actually just approach to a lot of jobs, play the numbers game. When I apply for jobs, I apply for like 30 a day.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's never been easier to apply, really, because a lot of portals, you have you upload your CV, any job that's in your wheelhouse, you just click apply. And, you just play the numbers. I'm like, okay, 30 a day, 30 days a week. I can't do public math on here, but let's say you apply for 500 jobs a month. You're going to get 5 interviews, and out of those 5 interviews, you're probably going to get a job. So with that approach, you need to get used to rejection.
Every rejection, every disappointment has led you here.
Because for me, I don't even think of it as rejection anymore. I'm just like, yep. I just see it again. It's always process oriented. It's like, I don't care what the outcome is. My process is I apply every day. And it gets to a point where every day I look at all the jobs that I want to apply for, all of them. And the next day wait for new jobs to come on, and that's just my process. It works.
Nice.
The final method is what I call the sort of white glove methodology. So this is the more quality over quantity approach. This is the more, okay, I know which company I'm going to work for. I'm going to research the hiring managers and the recruiters. I'm going to tailor my resume to that company specifically. I'm going to do that to, okay, I'll pick like 5 companies, and that's my focus. And of course, the pros about this is that the higher quality you have, you can stand out from the other candidates. So that's good. Yep. The downside though is that you sort of run the risk of spending a lot of time on an application that was never going to go anywhere. So, these are the 3 main ways to go, and they all have their pros and cons. And so you just have to figure out, what you're willing to do, where your strengths lie, and sort of go with that.
In all honesty, my methodology is similar, but kind of different. So I've always kind of been the first one when you talked about be the inside man. And I've always tried to, learn as much and promote as much where I'm at. But it also really depends on where you're at in your career journey, because I can tell you from experience and just talking with other people in the industry, that first option is probably not going to make you a lot of money. If you want to make a lot of money fast, you're going to have to job hop in this industry. It is very rare to get large raises when you're being hired within. You're going to get the experience though. And I feel like that's the easiest way to get experience, but the hardest way to make the most money. The second option is I'd say the easiest way to make the most money and the hardest way to gain experience, because, you're jumping jobs a little bit more and you can control how long you're at a position. But you don't get to be as selective necessarily. And you're going to make a lot of cash. You're going to jump that pay scale ladder quickly. But it can be difficult to like pick your experience because you're just putting it out there and seeing what bites. Where the third option is kind of the best of both worlds, but it's also, you're going to get the most experience and eventually you're going to get the most money, but it's going to take the longest amount of time, I feel, to do that, because you're going to have to get really good at what you do at your current job. And then by the time you are ready, you have to be dedicated enough to leave that nice cushy job you probably have currently and grind all over again and work up that ladder within. So it really, I think, depends on where you're at in your career field, where you're at in your career. Are you ready just to dash for the cash, or do you need to build the skills first? Would you agree?
I think that's such a valid point. And I think this is a really good transition to talk about money and cloud. Yeah. So my personal philosophy is that your very first job in the cloud industry should not be necessarily about the money. It should be about the experience. And the reason I say this is because I think getting a job in the cloud industry is actually quite difficult, especially as a beginner with no experience. The reason is because a lot of people want to get into the cloud industry, so there's a lot of supply, but there's only a limited amount of cloud jobs. So your first goal is you just get a job, get some experience, because the reality is that a lot of the money is actually on the back end, is when you have 2 years experience, 3 years experience, because guess what? That the supply is lower. There's a lot less people who have those skills. There's a lot less people who have those experience, but also there's a lot more companies who need those. And so it actually flips, where once you actually have 2 or 3 experience, guess what? Recruiters are calling you all the time. Getting a job isn't that difficult, but it's just to getting in. And so that's why I'm like, just whatever you need to do, if you need to take a pay cut, if you need to do whatever, as long as, you're long term, that's where you want to go long term, just get in there however you can, and know that in a year or two, that's when, a lot of the money comes in. So that's my philosophy around money and cloud, where the back end is where you get paid.
I can 100% attest to that because, going back to my story, when I was a bulldozer operator, I was making decent money. I was making like $70,000 a year. And when I decided to make the career change, I knew there's no way I was going to get that type of money in a first job. And, I took over $20,000 a year pay cut for my first job. I started off my first job was like $49,000 a year. But in the 2 years I worked for that company, I almost made all that back. By the time I left that organization, and just raises, and this is not normal, don't expect this, but it can happen. I'm telling you this because it can happen. I had gotten over, it was about $18,000 worth of raises in 2 years. And
wow.
And both the raises I got while I was there, the owner of the company came in and said, "We are significantly underpaying you for what you're doing in this organization. You have been working your tail off, and I want you to know it hasn't gone unnoticed. We need to get you up to the pay that you deserve." When they said that to me the very first time, they handed me a piece of paper saying that I was getting a $13,000 a year raise. So, same job and nothing else changed. They were just going to pay me more money. I'm telling you that because it happens, and you need to keep your eye on the end goal. Like you're saying, you're going to have to take a pay cut more than likely if you're making decent money to get into this field. But if you are determined and you keep your eye on the end goal, you're going to make it back pretty quick.
Yeah, and just to support that story, because again, I feel like there's so many influencers out there just going, "Oh yeah, earn 6 figures in your first role," and that's like a common trope. And the reality is, you're either gonna keep stagnant, take a pay cut. In some cases, some cases you can even get a pay rise, but I'd say don't expect that. Right. I've seen people who've gone from no cloud experience to 6 figures. I've seen that, but you'll notice they're usually in like a high cost of living area, like New York or San Francisco, where like if you actually translated that into other areas, it's not really 6 figures because all the money goes on accommodation and transport. So that aside, but yeah, same with my career. I found that like in the first, year or two, in the cloud industry, I got, little pay rises, here and there. But by year 3, in the same company, like each year, my pay went up by like £10,000. By the 4th year, like my salary had tripled, So, and that's what I mean by that compounding, because the more skills you have, the more valuable you become in the marketplace. And like what you were saying, actually, to sort of caveat that doesn't just happen automatically. You have to become more valuable, by, like you're saying, working your tail off, getting new certifications. Again, now certifications come in a little bit more, because at least in the cloud, because now, and again, it's not just the certification, it's the fact that you can use the knowledge you're gaining from the certification, and it gives you the opportunity to just add more value, because now you have leverage. You're like, okay, I know how A, B, and C works. I can do it quicker, more efficiently. Because the reality is, the cloud industry, the reason it pays so well is because the cloud infrastructure of a business is the business. If the website goes down, guess what? There's no revenue for the business. So your decisions could either make the company millions or destroy millions for that company. And that's why they pay you well, to make sure that their systems are always online, the systems are always performant, all of this. And the more senior you are, the more experienced you are, the better you can do that job. So again, I just want to add that caveat where like these pay rises are not automatically automatic, but they give you that leverage you can have to really accelerate your skills and your growth.
And despite popular belief, it is cheaper to give an employee a raise than to start all over and hire someone new. Training and job hunting costs a significant amount of money. It takes time and resources away from people that can be doing other jobs. So if you are being a good, honest, hard worker, this definitely doesn't go unnoticed. And I want to talk a little bit about something I think we kind of skimmed over is the importance of having a good mentor and different online communities to be a part of. But before we start talking about this, I want to talk about your channel and where, if people want to connect with you and learn more about you, where can they go to find you?
Yes, so on YouTube, you just type in Cloud Career Mentor. I'm there. Also, on any podcast app, Cloud Career Mentor, we're there as well. So yeah, I always try to give, this kind of advice, more realistic things, more how to interview, what skills you should have, just stuff that are relevant to people who want to make that change, either to learn cloud skills or to actually transition fully into the cloud industry.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the importance of different online communities and the importance of trying to find mentors in the space. Is there any resources that significantly impacted your journey and that you would recommend to others?
Yeah, so YouTube was very important, just Googling how to do things and just finding different resources here and there. And I guess in my case, it was a bit tricky because, again, I didn't know I wanted to be in the cloud industry. So I dabbled in software development, cloud. So I was just picking up skills as I went. But the reason I actually started my channel was because I realized how I did it was very inefficient. I was learning front-end React applications. I was learning things that weren't really relevant. And I wasted a lot of time. And so what I've done is I've distilled all that knowledge, what I actually see in the industry in terms of what technologies are being used, what employers are looking for, what mistakes beginners make. Because again, I talk to a lot of people, so and the reason I can come on your show and say all these things is A, either I've made those mistakes, or B, I've spoken to people who are making those mistakes. So yeah, I'd say YouTube is your friend, podcasts are your friend. Any other specific resources? I can't, because I haven't been a beginner in a while, so my resources are a bit different now. So I'm not really sure, but I'm sure people will find stuff if they need. And actually, so one more resources I actually created. It's a free guide called 3 Simple Steps to Your First Cloud Job. And, it sort of summarizes a lot of what we're talking about today. I can send you a link so you can put it in the show notes, because I think your listeners would actually gain a lot of value from that, actually, so they can read that at their leisure.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure and link that up down in the show notes. As we start to land the plane here, looking back at your career journey, what advice would you give your younger self or just someone who is starting out their career in tech?
I'd give 2 pieces of advice, actually, and they're different but similar, and they have nothing to do with technology. The first one is be curious. You never know what's out there until you look, and the reason, I was able to do what I'm doing is because I was like, oh, let me learn about Linux, and oh, let me create a web server, and oh, let me learn Python, let me create this application. And there were just a lot of things I did, not knowing where it would lead, but I just thought, I think this is interesting. I think this is valuable. I'm just going to do it. And so that's be curious. And that's so important. Almost every cloud professional I've talked to, that's the number one thing they recommend as well. And the second thing is having focus and discipline, similar to what we talked about, being able to say, okay, at this time, every day, I'm going to do this thing. Every day, you wake up, you do it. It's the same if you want to go to the gym. So for example, for me, 4 days a week, wake up at 6:30, go to the gym. It's difficult when you start, but after 2-3 weeks of doing this, you wake up, you're excited. Yeah. You do it. You feel weird if you don't do it. So build that discipline, push past the pain, understand that, yes, it's hard to wake up to open my laptop to do Linux. But what you'll find is once you actually start, you start enjoying it. Those are the 2 pieces of advice. Be curious. And also be disciplined.
Such great advice. And again, thank you for taking your time to come on and share all these wonderful, bits of wisdom with our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope someone's been inspired and, someone can make that change they've been looking for. And I really want to appreciate all you do for people in the tech industry. You're giving a lot of really valuable information. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, hit that subscribe button.
Absolutely. And like I said, we're going to link up all of the resources for you guys to go check out down in the show notes or the video description. So definitely go check those out. Thank you again for coming on the channel. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, keep learning.